Hi friends, so the purpose of this video is just in case you would like the option for the test to be read aloud to you. You can have this video up in a separate tab and be taking your test as we go. Now the nice part about a video is that you are in control of when you pause and when you play. So I'm not necessarily going to pause after every question, but that's when you can come through and pause the video, or you can rewind or whatever you need to do. So this is just a resource. You do not need to use this unless you don't want to, but I am going to read the test aloud just because there are some articles that we'll be reading through. So your screen will look just a little bit different than mine because yours is sectioned off. Mine is just all in one since I'm in teacher mode. But you're going to want to start by putting your last name and your first name. All right. Part 1. Read the short article and answer the following questions. So here is the article, keeping in mind that we are focusing on central idea and supporting details here. Here we go. A hoax is a story created to trick people into believing something that isn't true. One famous hoax that fooled many was the Cardiff Giant. Discovered by William Newell in 1869 while his workers were digging a well, the giant appeared to be a 10-foot tall, petrified man. People quickly believed that the giant was all that remained of a long-lost civilization of giants. Even scientists believed it was real. After its discovery, William Newell and his cousin George Hull set up a tent and began charging people to see the giant. It became a popular tourist attraction. The men made a lot of money from people who believed it to be real. The Cardiff Giant even caught the attention of famous showman P.T. Barnum, who wanted to add it to the Barnum and Bailey circus. When Newell couldn't agree, Barnum built his own version. In 1870, both giants were found to be fakes. The Cardiff Giant was actually created by George Hull, who planned the idea after an argument about whether or not giants once lived on Earth. The original Cardiff Giant is currently on display at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York. After all these years, people are still paying money to see it. However, they are now paying to see the remains of an elaborate hoax, not the remains of a long-lost race of giants. All right. So knowing that, we are now going to move on to the questions. And the first one says, what would be the best title for the article? The first one, I'm going to refer to them as A, B, and C. A, the hoax of the Cardiff Giant. B, how to trick people and make a lot of money. C, many famous hoaxes. Or D, P.T. Barnum's Giant. Which is the best title for the article? The next question says, which statement best expresses the central idea of the article? A hoax is a story that is made up to trick people. B, people are easily fooled by hoaxes. C, one of the most famous hoaxes in history is the Cardiff Giant hoax. Or D, people love to spend money on hoaxes even after they know the truth. Which statement best expresses the central idea of the article? Then the next section is a new article. So we're going to read this article. This is the first page. We'll need to scroll down to read the rest. So it's called The Truth About Fairies. Throughout history, hoaxes have captivated and fooled audiences. One of the most famous hoaxes in history was pulled off in 1017 by two young girls in England. That was when 16-year-old Elsie Wright and her cousin, 9-year-old Frances Griffiths, managed to execute a prank that would fool many, including one of the most famous mystery writers in the world. The Cottingley Fairy hoax was set in motion when the two British schoolgirls got in trouble for getting muddy while playing near a beck in the backyard. A beck is like a creek or a stream. They claimed they only went near the stream to see their fairy friends. Elsie's father was an amateur photographer, and one day the girls borrowed Mr. Wright's camera and took pictures in a field behind the family's house. The girls wanted to prove they communicated with fairies in the garden. When Mr. Wright developed the photographs, fairies could indeed be seen interacting with the girls. He considered them fake, and he banned Elsie from borrowing the camera again. However, her mother Polly believed the girls. She was convinced that the fairies were real and told others. Word of the photos spread, and the story became a sensation in England. Questions as to whether or not the fairies really existed began to circulate. Many people were convinced that Elsie and Frances had indeed communicated with fairies. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, doctor, author, and creator of the character Sherlock Holmes, was one such believer. Conan Doyle was interested in mystical subjects and wanted to prove that humans could communicate with spirits and other beings. When he examined the original photographs and claimed them to be authentic, even more people began to believe in fairies. It wasn't until a 1983 magazine interview that the hoax was exposed, when the girls admitted to fabricating them. They said that they cut out fairies from a children's book and drew wings on them. Then they added the pictures to the setting using hat pins. They didn't use any high-tech effects at all. Elsie said that she and Frances were too embarrassed to admit the truth after fooling Conan Doyle. She said, 2 village kids and a brilliant man like Conan Doyle? Well, we could only keep quiet. Speaking of the first photograph, Frances said, I never thought of it as being a fraud. It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun. I can't understand to this day how people could have believed that they were real fairies. I could see the backs of them and the hat pins when the photo was being taken. Interestingly, during the interview, the girls, then quite elderly, still insisted that one of the 5 photos was genuine. 60 years had passed, and they were still trying to convince the world that fairies existed. All right, so the first question of this section says, what would be the best new title for this article? A, The Great Hoax of 1917. B, The Girls Who Pranked the World. C, The Cottingley Fairy Hoax. Or D, How to Pull Off a Hoax. The next question says, what is this article mostly about? A, 2 girls who managed to trick a famous author. B, 2 girls who fooled people into believing that fairies exist. C, the methods used to trick photographs in the early 1900s. Or D, how foolish people can believe a hoax for over 60 years. What is the article mostly about? Which statement best summarizes the central idea of paragraph 3? So before we read the answers, we want to find paragraph 3. So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. So paragraph 3 starts with word of the photo spread and the story became a sensation in England, and it carries over to the next page a little bit. So knowing where paragraph 3 is, and you might have to look on your own page to reread that one, which statement best summarizes the central idea of just paragraph 3? Is it A, many people, including intelligent ones, believe the photos were real? B, real and false stories spread rapidly? C, even upon close examination, the photographs looked authentic? Or D, Elsie's mother convinced others that the girls really did see fairies? What best summarizes the central idea of paragraph 3? Next question says, what is the central idea of paragraph 2? So paragraph 2 is the Cottingley Fairy hoax was set in motion when the 2 British schoolgirls got in trouble for getting muddy while playing near a beck in the backyard. So that middle chunk next to this photograph is paragraph 2. So you might have to go back on your screen to reread. But is it A, it shows how Mr. and Mrs. Wright believe the photo images really were fairies? B, the paragraph explains that the girls got in trouble for playing near the stream? C, the paragraph tells how you never know what will show up in photographs? Or D, the paragraph is about how the hoax story got started? So think about the paragraph 2 as a whole. What is the central idea? Next question says, read the following line from paragraph 2. So this is just one line of it. It says, the girls wanted to prove that they communicated with fairies in the garden. How does this line support the central idea of the paragraph? So the line we just read, how does that support the main idea of the paragraph? Your options are A, it shows the reason the girls took the photographs. B, it shows the girls intended to fool the world. C, it tells how fairies communicate with humans. Or D, it shows how the girls wanted to be famous for talking to fairies. The last 2 questions are long answer questions. The most you're going to be writing on each question, though, is 3 sentences. So the first one is saying, what is the central idea of paragraph 5? So if we go back up here and we count our paragraphs, we know that this one is 3, here is 4, and 5 says, speaking of the first photograph, Frances said, I never thought of it as being a fraud. It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun. I can't understand to this day how people could have believed that there were real fairies. I could see the backs of them in the hat pins when the photo was being taken. So knowing that's paragraph 5, what is the central idea? You need to also include 2 text details that support the central idea. You will be writing 3 sentences. So the first sentence is, the central idea is, period. And then the other 2 are quotes. So a detail that supports the central idea is, fill in the blank. Another detail that supports is, fill in the blank. And again, writing in complete sentences. And then the last question is one we have talked about quite a bit this week. Why do you think the author included the photographs? How do they support the central idea? You should have 2 complete sentences here. So I think that the author included the photographs because, fill in the blank. They support the central idea because, and fill in the blank. Make sure you are using capital letters and periods with these last 2 answers, but I hope this was helpful for you, and email it with any questions.